I'm Dr. Melissa Hart, a trauma physician in Portland, Oregon. Last Christmas Eve, after a brutal double shift in the ER, I came home expecting silence. Instead, I found my 16-year-old daughter, Emily, asleep on the couch, curled up like she didn't belong in her own skin. She wasn't supposed to be home. She was supposed to be with my family, celebrating the holiday. But when she got there, they told her there wasn't room. Not at the table. Not in the house. That night changed everything. Not just for Emily, but for me too. And I knew I was done. Christmas Eve in the ER is a special kind of chaos. It's sirens in the snow, heartbreak in holiday colors. We lost a man that night, mid-50s, said he was just tired. His skin was already turning blue when he came in. I worked 2 shifts back to back, patched people up, gave terrible news to strangers, and held hands that were running out of time. By the time I left, it was nearly midnight. I was bone tired, the kind of exhaustion that seeps into your thoughts, where you start forgetting if you've eaten or what day it really is. All I wanted was quiet. I wasn't even thinking about Christmas anymore. I just needed silence, a hot shower, and maybe 5 uninterrupted hours of sleep. Instead, when I opened the front door, the first thing I noticed wasn't the quiet. It was a pair of boots by the door. Not mine, not my husband's, Emily's. She wasn't supposed to be there. My daughter had begged to drive herself to our family's Christmas Eve dinner this year. 16, newly licensed, proud as ever. It was tradition, spending the evening at her grandparents' house, surrounded by cousins and casseroles and forced smiles. She left early, all dressed up and beaming. She even brought cookies she made herself. I remember reminding her to text me when she got there. She did. Everything was supposed to be fine. But there she was, asleep on the couch. Or something like sleep. Curled up in that tense, half-defensive way that screams more than rest. Her coat was tossed over the armrest, her overnight bag still zipped. She hadn't even unpacked. I just stood there, staring. It didn't make sense. Emily? I said her name like it might explain something. She blinked awake slowly, like she hadn't been sleeping, just waiting. Hey, I whispered. Why are you here? She sat up, tugging her sleeves down like she was trying to disappear into them. Her voice cracked on the first word. They said there wasn't room. At first, I didn't get it. Room where? At the table, she said. Then tried to shrug like it didn't matter. But it did. She kept going. They said they weren't expecting me. Grandma looked stressed. She said there were already too many people. I could feel my pulse spike. But you were on time, right? She nodded. Right on time. I even brought cookies. Then her voice dropped to barely a whisper. They told me there wasn't a bed left either. My stomach sank. Did anyone offer to drive you home? Another shake of the head. I didn't want to make it worse, she said. I just left. I turned toward the kitchen and saw it. One lonely slice of toast on a paper towel. Half a banana, untouched. That was her Christmas dinner. And just like that, my exhaustion vanished. Because this wasn't just a mistake, it was a message. And they used my daughter to deliver it. I stood in that living room, staring at the toast. One slice, slightly bent at the corners, sitting on a paper towel like an afterthought. A half-eaten banana next to it, browning at the edges. That was it. That was my daughter's Christmas dinner. She looked up at me, trying so hard to make it seem like it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't really hungry, she said, but her voice wavered. Her eyes were starting to shine, that watery glaze right before tears spill. But she blinked, hard, bit her lip like she could chew through the sadness if she tried hard enough. They made it seem like I was being rude, she whispered, like showing up was some kind of imposition, like I wasn't part of the plan and I ruined it by being there. That's when I felt it. Not just anger, but something deeper. That kind of cold, glassy hurt you feel right before everything inside you breaks. I sat next to her. She leaned in immediately, like she'd been holding herself upright for hours out of pure willpower and could finally rest. I wrapped my arm around her, and she sank into me, small and quiet and so heartbreakingly kind. "I was going to bring a pie," she said, voice trembling. "But I thought they'd already have enough food. I didn't want to be a burden." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen, staring at Emily's bag, still zipped. Every detail of it carefully planned by a girl who just wanted to be accepted. Trusted them. We both did. But that moment changed everything. Not just because they excluded her, but because, in doing it so casually, they revealed the truth. It had never been about forgetting her. It was about deciding she didn't belong. The thing is, this wasn't new. That night, sitting in the kitchen, watching my daughter sleep with her shoes still on, I realized I'd seen this before. Not just in how they treated Emily, but in how they treated me. This wasn't a holiday misstep. This was a pattern, a legacy. I've always been the strange one, the outsider in my own family, too curious, too driven, too much. When I was 6, I found a dead bird in the backyard. I asked if I could dissect it, not because I was cruel, but because I wanted to understand how it worked. My mom slapped the counter so hard it rattled. "Jesus, Melissa, what's wrong with you?" My sister Rachel screamed and ran around the house telling everyone I was trying to build a zombie. I got grounded for scaring her. That was the tone of my childhood. I loved anatomy books, asked for a microscope for Christmas, talked about blood flow over dinner. And in my family, being curious wasn't praised. It was punished. They thought I was showing off. Raising my hand too much at school made me a showboat. Studying hard made me a snob. No one else went to college. Most didn't finish high school on the first try. I became the family punchline. "Too smart to be one of us," my dad used to joke. He'd laugh when he said it, like it was harmless. But I overheard him once, asking my mom if she'd ever cheated on him, because I didn't look like anyone else in the family. I never slept well after that. Rachel, of course, settled into the golden child role. She wasn't academic, but she was loud, funny, and charming in that way that made people feel like she was the main character in every room. She cried on cue, turned mistakes into adorable stories, and she loved reminding everyone that she looked out for her weird little sister. She used to call me Dr. Freak. When I actually became a doctor, she upgraded it to Dr. Moneybags. I guess that was progress. When I got a full scholarship to medical school, no one celebrated. My mom just looked me dead in the eye and asked, "Who's going to marry you now?" Men don't like women who act smarter than them. I told her maybe I'd marry myself. She didn't laugh. They never gave me a cent. I waited tables through undergrad, worked every overnight shift, and studied on breaks with aching feet and no safety net. They told everyone I was living the dream, but never visited. Not once, not during school, not during my residencies. Still, when they needed help, I showed up. Because that's what I was taught to do. Because part of me still wanted to be accepted, even when I should have known better. After I finished my second residency and landed a steady job, things finally started to feel manageable. Not easy, never easy, but I could breathe. I met my husband on an overnight shift, romantic in that sleep-deprived, shared coffee kind of way. We moved into a modest home with furniture we didn't have to assemble with duct tape. I thought maybe, finally, the hard part was behind me. That's when the calls started. "Can you help with the electric bill? Can you co-sign this lease? Can you ask one of your doctor friends about Uncle Dale's back pain?" It was never just one call, never just once. It was always the same pattern. Urgency wrapped in guilt, dressed up as family loyalty. And for a while, I said yes. Every time. When my parents approached retirement with no savings, bad credit, and a long history of rental evictions, I stepped in. I bought them a house. Not a mansion, not even big, but clean, safe, and theirs. Well, legally mine. I told them it was a gift. I'd cover the mortgage, the taxes, the maintenance. I'd keep the power on, refill their prescriptions, navigate their insurance claims. To them, I was still the backup, the bank, the weird sister who somehow became successful and owed them for it. Every time they asked for help, it wasn't with gratitude, it was with expectation, like it was my duty, like I hadn't earned any of it. But Emily? Emily never made demands. She never guilted me for missing a school play when I was stuck in surgery. She understood. She didn't beg for things or manipulate emotions to get her way. She helped me cook dinner when I was too tired to think and left sticky notes on my mirror that said, "You've got this." And yet they turned her away. 3 weeks after that call with Rachel, it was Christmas Eve. Emily was excited. She'd been looking forward to it, felt grown up being trusted to drive herself. She packed an overnight bag, wrapped small gifts for the little cousins, picked out a cardigan Grandma once complimented. She even made cookies from scratch. I reminded her to text me when she got there. She did. Everything seemed fine. Until I walked through the front door late that night and found her curled up on the couch, shoes still on, holding herself like she didn't belong anywhere. Her smile wobbled as she said in the smallest voice, "Grandma said there wasn't space. Not at the table, not for a bed. So I came back." She'd counted 28 people there, even a neighbor, but not her. And that's when everything snapped into focus. I thought about every mortgage payment, every refill request, every just this once that became permanent. Every holiday I sat quietly while they made jabs for the sake of peace. And now they'd used my daughter to send a message they didn't have the nerve to say out loud. They hadn't run out of chairs. They'd run out of decency. And I knew. I wouldn't let them do this to Emily. I had let them make me small for years, but they were not going to do the same to her. The next morning, my husband got home from his shift. I told him what happened. Every detail, from the boots by the door to the untouched toast on the paper towel. He stood there for a long time, saying nothing. Then he asked, "So what do we do now?" I didn't answer right away, but the truth was already sitting heavy in my chest. I knew. I'd known since the moment Emily whispered, "They said there wasn't room." This wasn't a one-time slight. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a message. And for once, I was going to send one back. We got in the car the morning after Christmas. No ornaments, no leftover pie. Just silence and resolve. I held the envelope in my lap, the one with the eviction notice. I'd already drafted it before sunrise. The house was in my name. The mortgage was in my name. Every bill, every receipt, every sacrifice. All mine. When we pulled up, I half hoped no one would be there. But Rachel's SUV was in the driveway, along with another car I didn't recognize. Of course. Leftovers and smugness never go out of season in my family. I rang the doorbell. Once, twice. Nothing. "Let's just leave it," my husband said gently. I stood there a second longer, then nodded. I tucked the envelope into the door frame, tight enough so it wouldn't blow away. But just as we were getting into the car, I heard it. The creak of the screen door, a slippered step. My mother appeared in her fuzzy holiday robe, the same one she bragged about getting for 90% off. She bent down, pulled out the envelope, and began to read. Her face went blank, then pale. Then, "Frank, get out here. She's throwing us out." My dad stumbled to the door, still in yesterday's clothes, squinting like the sun was a personal attack. "What the hell?" Rachel followed, cradling a mug like this was all just a cozy little misunderstanding. My mom pointed down the driveway like I was a stray animal that wandered too close. "You ungrateful little—" We didn't stay to hear the rest. We got in the car and drove away. It didn't matter what came next. I already knew the script. I'd heard the greatest hits all my life. By the time we got home, my phone was already buzzing. Missed calls, voicemails, texts. I ignored the first, then the second, then the fifth. On the sixth, I answered. "How dare you?" my mother screamed. No greeting, no concern for Emily, just fury. "You've lost your damn mind." I pulled the phone away from my ear. I could still hear my father yelling in the background. "If you do this, you're no daughter of ours." Not one of them asked what happened. Not one of them mentioned Emily. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't losing anything. I was finally walking away. They kept calling and texting. Rachel sent me a message that actually said, "This is going to ruin your reputation. Think of your career." As if my career had anything to do with their eviction. As if my patients cared where my parents lived or how many chairs were at our family table. By that evening, my phone looked like it had gone through a breakup. 32 missed calls, 14 texts, 3 voicemails. One cousin had the nerve to write, "Not my place, but this feels extreme. You only get one mom." Sure, you only get one mom. But what they never say is, sometimes, even one is too many. The next morning, there was a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole, of course. My mother. She stood there in that same fuzzy robe, gripping the eviction letter, now crumpled, damp, like she'd been squeezing it for hours. I opened the door. Didn't invite her in. "You're really doing this?" she hissed. "After everything we've done for you?" I let the silence hang, then said calmly, "You mean the house I bought for you? The bills I paid? The health insurance I arranged because Medicare wouldn't cover your blood pressure meds?" She flinched for half a second, then straightened her spine. "We raised you. We gave you everything." "You didn't even let my daughter eat dinner," I said. That shut her up, briefly, but only briefly. "Oh, stop being so dramatic," she snapped. "We didn't have enough chairs." "There were 28 people there," I said. "Even a neighbor." Her lips tightened into a line. She wasn't done yet. "I didn't send that letter to be cruel," I added. "But if you think you can treat Emily like she's disposable—" "Oh, for God's sake," she cut in, throwing her arms up like this was all too exhausting. "Stop acting like we're monsters. You're the one tearing this family apart over a misunderstanding. And now you're threatening your own parents?" She waved the letter in the air like it was some courtroom drama, then, and I'll never forget this, ripped it in half, right there on my porch. "There," she said, like it settled everything. "That's done now." She looked me straight in the eye and added, "If you want us to forgive you, you'll pay for Laya's science camp and drop this ridiculous tantrum." She smiled, like she'd just solved everything. I didn't say a word, because something inside me had clicked. They had never taken me seriously. Not when I was a kid dissecting frogs in the backyard. Not when I became a doctor. Not even now, with a title in front of my name and a house in my name. They thought I wouldn't follow through. That this was just another one of my episodes. They were wrong. 2 mornings later, I met with a lawyer. I laid it all out. Every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every prescription refill, every silent sacrifice they never even acknowledged. He didn't blink. "I assume you want a formal eviction?" he asked, like it was just another Tuesday. I nodded. Certified, signature required. He filed it that week. 60 days notice, fully legal, neatly documented. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it for peace, for Emily, for myself. I kept paying the mortgage. I wasn't about to let my credit take a hit because of them. But everything else? Stopped. Cold. No more electric, no more cable, no more quiet, dutiful co-pays or refill pickups. Let them handle it. 2 weeks later, there was another knock at the door. I assumed it was another confrontation. But it wasn't my mother this time. It was Aunt Diane, the good aunt, or so I thought. She brought a tin of cookies, and that carefully practiced expression people wear when they're about to say, "I just want to talk." I let her in. We sat in the kitchen. I poured tea. Neither of us touched it. "It just doesn't sound like you," she said after a long pause. "Throwing out your parents over a misunderstanding." I laughed once, not kindly. Then I told her everything. The house, the bills, the years of being used and dismissed. The Christmas Eve that broke something I hadn't realized was still holding on. I told her how Emily had counted 28 people in that house, including a neighbor, but not one seat for her, not one bed, not even a smile. Diane's face changed. Her voice softened. "I didn't know," she whispered. "They didn't tell you," I corrected. She left quietly, nodding like someone who had just heard something they couldn't unhear. 3 days later, I got a text from one of my cousins. I didn't understand before, but I do now. A week before the eviction deadline, my lawyer called. "They haven't moved," he said, "at all." "Then we proceed," I replied. That same day, I listed the house. Fair price, no markup. I didn't want profit. I wanted closure. Within days, we had an offer. The neighborhood was popular, family-friendly. The buyers wanted a clean handover and vacant possession. My real estate agent asked if I wanted to be there the day the house was cleared. I said no. The new owners handled everything through the proper channels. I heard it wasn't pretty. What came next wasn't pretty either. What came next wasn't much better, for them at least. Rachel took them in, of course. She always liked to perform the role of the better daughter. She gave interviews to cousins like it was a press tour. She abandoned them, she said, all because of one holiday mix-up. 3 weeks later, she was on my doorstep. No smile, no warm-up. "I can't do it," she said. No hello, no pretense. Her eyes were bloodshot, hair in a messy bun like she hadn't slept. "They're fighting constantly," she added, voice stretched thin. "Mom says the living room's too small. Dad says my kids are loud. They won't share a bathroom. I'm going insane." I leaned against the doorframe, crossed my arms. "They need a rental," she said, almost pleading. "You could at least help, just the deposit." I didn't blink. "No." She blinked. Hard. "Melissa, come on." "You watched my daughter get turned away on Christmas Eve," I said calmly. "You said nothing. That was your choice. This is mine." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. There was nothing left to say. She turned and walked back to her car. I didn't watch her drive away. A week later, she kicked them out too. They ended up in a rental no one brags about. 2 cramped rooms, 1 faulty heater, a tilted front step like the house itself was shrugging. Their combined pension barely covered the rent, let alone groceries or repairs. Gone were the vacation plans. Gone were the smug dinners and the judgment dressed as tradition. They tried to rally sympathy from the extended family, claimed I had blindsided them, said I was unstable, cold, disloyal. But I had already sent out every piece of paperwork I needed to, the mortgage records, the utility bills, the certified eviction notice, time-stamped and legal. No accusations, just proof. One cousin replied with a single word, "Wow." Another sent a thumbs-up emoji. No one rushed to their rescue. No one showed up with a deposit or a spare room. And neither did I. I didn't celebrate it. I didn't feel triumphant. But I did feel still. For the first time in a long time. 2 months later, Emily and I sat on the porch, sipping iced tea, watching the sun settle behind the rooftops. Just the 2 of us. No performance, no drama, just peace. She looked over and said, "I don't miss them, you know." "I don't either," I said. And I meant it. My phone buzzed a few days later, an unknown number. I opened the message. "Hope you're proud of what you've done." I didn't even read the rest, just deleted it. "They'll probably text again," Emily said from across the porch, sipping her iced tea. "They always do," I replied. But the thing was, they didn't matter anymore. Not really. There was no room left, not for guilt, not for manipulation, not for emotional games disguised as family values. I had spent years trying to earn a seat at a table that was always one chair short, unless it was someone else they preferred. But now, we had our own table, our own peace. And I'd finally realized something. Sometimes love isn't about blood. It's about boundaries. Sometimes family isn't about keeping the peace. It's about protecting it. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. I didn't send that eviction letter to punish anyone. I sent it because I was done playing the role they wrote for me. The awkward girl who'd never quite fit in, the backup plan, the invisible wallet in a white coat. I wasn't just walking away from a house. I was walking away from every version of myself that tolerated being made small to make them comfortable. If they'd excluded me, I could have taken it. But they came for my daughter. And that was the line. Now it's just me and Emily. We bake cookies without criticism. We laugh without tiptoeing. We talk about everything, openly, honestly, without fear of being called dramatic. And every once in a while, I'll get a message from someone who still believes I went too far. But if you've ever been the one left out, the one talked over, the one who made peace offerings that were ignored or mocked, then maybe you'll understand. This wasn't about revenge. It was about release. They said there was no room for my daughter at the table. Now there's no room in our lives for cruelty, control, or conditional love. So if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting your peace, this story is for you. You're not alone. And you never were. Let me know in the comments. Did she go too far or just far enough? If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We tell stories here, stories that honor the quiet strength it takes to finally say enough.